Lev Aronson, a Jewish man who survived the Holocaust and settled in America to pursue a career as a cellist. Lev Aronson was born on February 7, 1912 in Mönchengladbach, Germany. When World War I began in 1914, the decree of expulsion forced Jews to leave their homes for deportation. Aronson and his family settled in Voronezh, Russia. During this time, Aronson received his first cello and began lessons at the age of 7. When the family moved to Riga, Latvia, Aronson continued to focus on music. While in high school, Aronson attended a concert by the famous cellist Gregor Piatigorsky, and this performance was said to have changed Aronson's life. At 16 years old, he attended the University of Berlin to study law. However, he later left law school to concentrate on music full-time. Aronson got the opportunity to study under his idol Piatigorsky. Aronson would come to consider Piatigorsky the most impactful person in his life. Piatigorsky took Aronson under his wing, not only teaching him cello, but also becoming his friend and providing him with meals when needed. After graduation, Aronson continued to travel throughout Europe to study music, participate in competitions, and perform in concerts. After World War II broke out in 1939, Aronson and his family hid in Aronson's apartment in Riga. One day, 2 Latvian auxiliary police came to his home and forced Lev to give up his instruments. His valuable cellos, his source of making music, had been taken away from him, and this was only the beginning. The next day, all Jewish males had to evacuate the building and wash the street while onlookers watched and taunted. Following that, they were forced to restore trenches made in parklands. Aronson had to endure terrible conditions as the Jews were ordered by German officers to check for mines, grenades, or bombs by crawling over the floor. Aronson's hands, extremely important for a cellist, were being destroyed by this type of labor. Even though Aronson was put through horrific conditions and deprived of music, he was still able to use music to save his life. Aronson and other prisoners were ordered to load the back of a truck with coal in an hour's time or they would be shot. Without a clock or watch, there was no way to keep track of time. But Aronson came up with the idea of using 3 music pieces that were each about 20 minutes long to time 1 hour. Without music, Lev Aronson and the other prisoners would have been dead. The conditions and forced labor that the Jews suffered at the concentration camps were appalling. Many people experienced great losses, and Aronson was no exception. On the morning before he was leaving camp with a labor unit, he went to go see his sister Gerda at the gate of the nearby women's camp. She was barely recognizable to him, with blood on her hair and face, eyes glazed over with an expression of shock. Then a female guard appeared and began shouting and cursing at her. Crying, Gerda pulled away and left. This was the last time Aronson saw his sister. Throughout the war, Aronson went through numerous tragic, heartbreaking experiences, including brutal treatment, extremely grueling labor, and the loss of family. In 1945, Aronson was liberated by the Russians but was accused of being a spy and was confined in a Soviet repatriation camp. However, in July 1946, he managed to escape to the American militarized zone in Germany. He began a search for a cello, which was not an easy task. It was also initially difficult for him to resume playing, as the calluses on his fingers that are necessary for playing the cello had shrunken away from the last 4 years without touching an instrument. During this time, he met Nina Bukowska, a dancer who would become his wife, and finally, in 1948, they were allowed to go to America. In New York, Aronson reunited with his teacher and friend, Piatigorsky, who provided vital support to Aronson as he tried to establish himself as a musician in this new country. Piatigorsky bought him an instrument and helped him find auditions. It was a struggle for Aronson and his wife to get by, but Aronson eventually was able to secure a contract with the Dallas Symphony. Aronson served as assistant principal cellist from 1948 to 1949 and then as principal cellist until 1967. He spent his later years as a cello teacher at Baylor University and Southern Methodist University, and also continued to collaborate with other musicians to produce music. Lev Aronson passed away on November 12, 1988. The annual Lev Aronson Legacy Festival at Southern Methodist University commemorates Lev Aronson and his passion for music. The festival, founded by one of his former students, Brian Thornton, was created to honor and pass down the teachings of Lev Aronson.
The main idea that inspired me was his amazing triumph over tragedy. The things that he went through in World War II and the things that he saw, of course, I don't believe I could ever understand and ever come close to. The fact that he was able to give me these stories is very important to my life. And I feel like I'm able to express passion in music and to pass that along to audiences such as yourselves, to come from this tragedy of losing 25 members of his family, his beautiful Amati cellos and bows, to the Nazis. All of this loss was portrayed to me in lessons. So I feel like I had to tell these stories and have those stories live on, because he survived when not many people did. And he was able to show us all of his passion and meaning at the end of his life when I studied with him.
The fact that Aronson went through so much in the concentration camps but was still able to become a significant figure in the music world and impact so many lives as a teacher and musician shows how truly amazing he was. He influenced various generations as a teacher, including the well-known cellist Len Harrow, whose many successes include 2 Grammy Awards and being a guest for many leading orchestras, such as the Boston Symphony Orchestra and the National Symphony Orchestra in Washington, D.C.
I would never have met him. I don't think I would become a cellist if it hadn't been for his dynamic zest and love of life that I, as an 11-year-old, met for the first time a grown-up who treated me as just another mensch. And it was, well, I'm a musician today because of that.
Aronson survived many tragedies suffered in the Holocaust and concentration camps, persevering, always working and pursuing his passion, eventually becoming principal cellist at a major symphony.
I don't know if after losing everything that any of us would know how we might rebuild our life. And I think it probably evolved for him. And after losing every member of your family, after losing all of your instruments, after losing your technique, after losing your ability, how do you find the wherewithal to rebuild? But he did that, and he recovered these things, his technique. But I wonder if he knew that his great life's work was going to be a teacher and to teach some of the greatest players in the history of cello playing. But that's what happened.
Lev Aronson's triumph was not merely one man's survival of the concentration camps in World War II. His survival enabled him to contribute to the cultural fabric of this country and of the world. Aronson taught multiple generations of musicians, and many of his students themselves became teachers. In this manner, Aronson's circle of influence grew even wider, and it continues to widen to the present day. It has been said that art and culture are the civilizing forces in human society. Therefore, Lev Aronson's triumph over tragedy is truly the victory of enlightenment and civility over that of ignorance and brutality. This is no small thing. It is perhaps the greatest of things.